One of the biggest issues affecting our veterans today is the suicide epidemic. On average, 22 a day are committing suicide. We have a lot of goals in this documentary, in this foundation, one of which is to put a perspective and bring awareness to the suicide epidemic. What are your beliefs on why there is such a alarming rate of suicides in our veterans? You can also talk about what you think is the reason for the alarming suicide epidemic just in general, civilian life.
I think one of the major differences with the generation now, like I said previous, is okay. We get out, and if you know a few buddies or whatever that served, that's kind of like your little support system, or guys you can laugh or joke about things with that understand things that you've been through. But our generation said isn't going to drink coffee at the VA. We're not going to the Legions. We're not going to the VFW. When you get out, it's almost like you just cut the tie to the military altogether, and now you're floating around in this world where you're not like the civilians, but you're not in the military anymore. So you're kind of floating in this in between, and you're trying to, make yourself fit back into the civilian world, and there's not always, people around that can understand. Like, only veterans are really going to understand. And like I said, we're not going to talk to the Vietnam guys that are at the Legion or the VFW. You know, I feel like that's one of the biggest things. So when you don't have the support system or people that understand you, and you don't go to the VA because it has a bad rap, or you don't know how to get in, you just hold it all in. And there's nowhere for you to have an outlet for it. So people turn to things that are not healthy. They turn to the drugs and the alcohol or destructive behavior, and maybe they do find help before it's too late. But I feel like a lot of them, it's just not there. They don't have healthy coping mechanisms. They don't have healthy outlets, so it becomes like an internal ticking time bomb, basically.
And I think we hear, a lot of it. To me, it seems like a lot of the news stories, just recently too, unfortunately, it sounds like, you hear that this, highly decorated soldier with multiple tours has committed suicide. So I always immediately think PTSD and what those tours of duties did to him. But then I have to think about too, in my personal experience, the ones that I know that were in the military that committed suicide, I don't think that was the case for them. So I have, before we left for Iraq, there was an individual that committed suicide. And then within my unit, I think within the last couple of years, there was a female that I heard also committed suicide. And then when I was in Iraq, I know there was at least 2 people that had committed suicide while we were there. And to be honest, I can remember one of them also being a female.
So your experience with more females than males?
I'm going to say it's 50% that I can think of right now that I would personally know, yeah.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I think that's a hard thing to say why. I don't know. I think it's going to be different for everybody. I mean, like I said, the one thing too I think about, I worked at MEPS for a short time, but, when I was in, they were looking for warm bodies. So, I mean, this isn't picking from the cream of the crop. You need bodies to fill to go. We're in wartime. We're taking everybody. So there was a waiver for just about everything, whether it was a morale waiver, a weight waiver, or something like that. I mean, I'm sure things got overlooked. And at some point, maybe people that their mental state wasn't as good as it should have been, you're now throwing them into the military, accepting them. And now they have to deal with all this other, being away from whatever support system they knew, et cetera. That I think also could do a lot to it too.
And then once they're in, if they were already not the most mentally stable person, the military is not very keen on people getting mental health services.
Right. It's just such a broad question. It was meant to be tough. I don't think I don't think that there's really ever going to be a way that we're going to be able to figure it out. My hope is we could just bring awareness, and we can just bring a lot of ideas to people that are going through these rough situations, especially to our resource avenues that we'll be watching. Maybe something we'll click on and say, you know what, God, we never really thought about that. They got something here. Maybe we can, maybe we can change something, or maybe we can implement people. The way I look at it is, we're never going to be able to change we can't do surgery on our brains to change the way we think and the way we feel. We can alter it, but we can't change it. You know, I think what we're doing wrong in society and in our veterans is I don't think it makes any sense to put them in groups. I mean, why are we focusing on 22 veterans a day committing suicide? Who's to say that those 22 veterans a day would have committed suicide if they weren't veterans? You know, I have a tough time trying to find that grouping those two makes any sense. You know, I think it does have a lot to do with, like you said, how we were raised, who we are as people. I mean, there's some people that are just born with antisocial, you know, depression. As you said, I mean, there's probably some cases that were overlooked at MEPS, and so.
Well, I guess that doesn't really have to go with the suicide, but just saying, I mean, I know personally of individuals who also joined the Army or the military to get out of going to jail, even though against military code. I mean,
Right.
And I guess this might go back more to like the sexual assault thing, and you know, I mean, it's a diverse group that's in the military, people from all over, all different backgrounds.
Right.
So, and especially during that time, I think that's the way it was.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's just like you could look at it from the individual standpoint, like I had just mentioned. You know, you could look at it as right. I mean, the Legion. You know, I can admit, like I was a member at one point, but you know, now it's like, what's really the point? You know, the last Legion meetings that I had went to, it was like me and 3 other old veterans who I knew and I loved and respected. Actually, you know, there's probably 2 of them that I can think of that had since passed, but it's like I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand exactly what was the Legion for. I think we do need to revamp the Legion. We do need to make it more exciting and to allow veterans to talk. You know, the other issues, of course, are, you know, resources. So it's just spider webs into so many different areas. I don't think that there's just one either, you know.
So I had this discussion with my peer the other day, actually, off of this question, I think it was, and he had a very difficult time, and he was talking about how our resources are all about, you know, education, telling people suicide, what to look for, report something if you see something, you know, and a good idea is always to reach out to the family and friends as well, just because it's just not obviously those are the ones you need to watch out for the individual. But what would be really interesting to see is what does that help look like that they actually get? So, I mean, who do we call? And once we call that number, what's going to happen to our person? I mean, what is the help that they actually get? Is it counseling, or what is going to work? What, you know, maybe seeing individuals that have done it and, you know, can explain, you know, how it helped them and I guess what their story is.
Well, I know in one panel that we had done, one of the individuals had basically said that, you know, he went to the VA because he was feeling depressed, and he just wanted to find some resources, somebody to talk to, and he said, next thing I know, they freaking locked me up in the 5th floor for like a week for mental, you know, reasons. And he goes, and then I lost my job because of it. So then I get out of the, you know, I just went for help. They locked me up in the mental ward. I came out of there, lost my job, which didn't help, you know, so there's probably a stigma with that as well.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
What's going to happen? Like these resources, what are they? And how does it work? How are they going to help me? So I can definitely see where you're coming from with that, or where he was coming from with it.
And I think the VA's problem is that they want to do things that look good on paper to say that they did their job to prevent something from happening. Like I said, when I got out and I went to go get a physical to wrestle in college, and I left with a prescription for antidepressants because I have depression on my, list of disabilities that the VA pays me for. And I asked specifically, I said, why is this the one and only option I have? Why is this the first option? Like, why is counseling not an option? And they said, well, you need these. And I said, no, I don't. Like, why can't you set me up with somebody to talk to? If through the course of that, this seems like a viable option to assist with that.
Quick fix.
Right. They just want to give you this prescription, and now it's in their computer system that, well, we tried to help her just in case anything happens.
Which
Like,
which goes into a statistic that's,
right.
probably a lot of it is fabricated. And that was actually kind of one question that I had that I took out. I didn't think that it would really get brought up, but by you saying that, sounds like it's pretty easy to get whatever you want from a VA, and quick fix is sort of what they suggest rather than a coping method.
Right. And like we said, when I got this prescription, I was very against it, obviously. And this is the first time I've ever met this provider. I don't know her. She knows nothing about me other than what she has in a computer system. So I was very adamant that I didn't want to take these medications. And she said, it's okay. It's a really low dose. Like, it's just going to help you, like, calm down. And I was like, I'm fine,
I was calmed down.
Right? Now I'm not.
Now I'm irritated.
So I started to take them because I'm like, well, she's a doctor, right? Like, she has to know what she's talking about. And it messed me up even more. Like, I was not sleeping at all. Like, my anxiety was through the roof. I had a hard time walking into classes at college because I didn't even know why. I was terrified to walk into the class and sit in my desk. So I stopped taking them. And I called her back and I said, I'm not taking them, So I said, then I went to a civilian provider to have a second opinion done, and I had the prescriptions with me, and he told me those are not low doses. Those are very significant doses. So I don't know why I was being told one thing at the VA and then something else by a different medical professional, especially when I was adamant about not taking them in the first place. And when I told her that it was making me feel worse, she told me I just needed to wait until it was all in my system, and then I would feel better.
Right. Yeah. Give it some time.
But I'm like, no, like, I haven't slept in 4 days. Like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, and she's like, no, you just need to keep taking it. You just need to keep taking it. So I will never go back to the VA because that's been my experience, and I don't know if that's true for other people, but that's been true for me, and I don't trust them because I'm not somebody that's just going to take pills like it's going to make my life okay.
Right.
Working through these issues with the therapist I have now is helpful. It has made me way more self-aware and be able to process previous issues and the consequences of those issues to this day in a much more healthy manner, in my opinion. I don't need pills to do it. I don't need some lady lying to me about doses of pills to do it. I'm doing it on my own, without medication, with somebody who I feel genuinely cares about whether I get better or not. I felt like that lady was doing what she needed to do to wash her hands of me and send me out the door.
I would really love to meet somebody that has good experience with the VA, to be personally honest. But I honestly don't know a lot of people that utilize the VA. I'm not in the military anymore. I have had nothing but poor experiences. I also, not even as a patient, but I went through nursing school and we do a nursing rotation at the very end. Well, I wanted to be at the VA because I'm all about veterans. And then I got put in a different hospital somewhere around town, so I ended up switching with one of my peers so I could go to the VA. And there's like one thing I remember from being there is there was this one particular patient, and I remember just talking fine the first day I met him. I knew he was sick, and I just watched him deteriorate over the next 3 days, and he was gone. And I couldn't believe it from the day before. And he was one of my, I would come in and see him overnight because I was doing the night rotation, and I remember working. It just didn't seem to me. I just always felt like nothing was ever being done. He was just basically sitting there waiting to die. And I don't even recall him being on hospice. It was just, to me, that was like my first bad situation with it. But
yeah, I mean, it's just like the reputation. Like, I don't have a ton of experience. I mean, I've never, I don't like things that alter, not saying I don't need medication at times, you know, but I don't like things altered. I have a crazy way of thinking, but it seems to work for the most part, you know. So I don't have any really experience, necessarily bad experience with that, but you know, the reputation alone is just a bad experience because I'm like, okay, that's my only health insurance. And if something happens, I'm going to be kind of nervous that that's where I have to go if I have to get a surgery or something. And maybe that's not right to think that way, but there is a stigma out there. There is a reputation. It's not good, and that needs to change.
You know, and my heart was like, I wanted to work there because my heart was in it for the veterans. Like I legit wanted to go there and do what I could as a nurse. But also, I mean, those are federal jobs, right? So I mean, prior to what's going on right now, but I mean, you're also protected. So if you mess up or you don't care, I mean, are you really going to be held accountable? You're probably not going to lose your job because it's, you know, it's going to take a lot to fire anybody any federal position usually.
I just wanted to feel like I had a say in my care, and at the VA, I don't feel like you get that. Like they tell you this is the option, you take it or leave it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a legal situation.
Right.
Your lawyer says, well, I know that's what you want to do, but that's not, this is what we have to do.
Right.
You know, when even in the legal business, it's like you do have more say legally than you think you do. So, you know, your situation, it's clear why that was frustrating, and you know, you're paying an attorney for legal advice, or they work for you, the VA works for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how you should feel. So, well, I don't think I have anything else to add really. I think all the main questions were asked. Is there anything you guys want to add, or you guys want to ask each other?
I mean, I think I'm gonna just stick on the VA thing for a second here. I think too, you know, I have excellent health care coverage, so I don't have to go to the VA, but I do slowly get
Job-wise?
getting it. What do I?
From your job?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have that option. I could go pretty much anywhere, and because I have excellent health care insurance. Whereas, you know, that's not the case for everybody, where they don't have any other options but just go to the VA.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and God forbid you're given a life sentence, and that's their only treatment.
Right.
I said, like, I got private health insurance through my employer because I said the way I've been treated at the VA, like, I will never go back.
Right.
Like, I will pay for it so I can get the health care I want, and I don't have to worry about the VA is the only place I can go.
Right. Well, I appreciate you guys and your honesty, and you guys have been a huge help, and will continue to be a big help